James are a British rock band from Manchester, England. They formed in 1982 and were active throughout the 1980s, but most successful during the 1990s. Their hit singles include Come Home, Sit Down, and She's a Star, as well as their American college radio hit Laid. Following the departure of lead singer Tim Booth in 2001, the band became inactive but reunited in January 2007, returning for a new album and international tour. Up to 2010, the band had sold more than 25 million albums worldwide. History. Formation and early releases. 1982 - 1987, James were formed in 1982 in Whalley Range, Manchester, when Paul Gilbertson persuaded his friend Jim Glennie to buy a bass guitar and form a band with him. Their lineup solidified with the acquisition of Gavin Whelan on drums. He played a string of gigs under the names Venereal and the Diseases and, later, Volume Distortion, before settling on the name of Model Team International, then shortened to Model Team. They performed mostly improvised material derived from jam sessions, supporting the fall at an early gig. Vocalists and other musicians drifted rapidly in and out of their lineup, until the band encountered Tim Booth at a student disco. Gilbertson invited him to the band's Scout Hut in Withington to join the band as a dancer. After a brief period under the name Tribal Outlook, the band renamed themselves James in August 1982. A gig at the Horse Section Ienda caught the attention of Tony Wilson of Factory Records. He offered James an album deal with Factory, but the band, by now a settled live act, were worried about tarnishing their material in the studio and settled instead for a 3-track EP. Their debut release, the Jimone EP, was recorded at Strawberry Studios, Stockport, in August 1983 and released on Factory Records in September. It was named Single of the Week by major music papers in the UK, and led to the band providing the support for the Smiths between February and April 1985 on the Meat is Murder tour. The Smiths covered James' What's the World track during this tour. Although they were now being touted as the next big thing, several complex issues slowed their progress. Gilbertson's drug problems presented the band with no choice but to ask him to leave. Booth and Glennie had joined a sect named Lifewave that imposed many restrictions on their lifestyle and threatened the band's stability. The band's second EP, James 2, was released over a year after the first and accompanied by a feature on the cover of the NME, Gilbertson having been replaced by the band's guitar tutor Larry Gott. The first 2 EPs would later be collected as Village Fire. Reviews were once again positive, and Factory were eager for James to record an album with it, but the band believed Factory were purely image-based and left the label, striking a deal with Sire Records. Their third release, the Sit Down EP, came out in February 1986, and was followed by their debut album, Stutter, in July of that year. The album reached number 68 in the UK Albums Chart. Low on money and lacking coverage and promotion, the band recorded their second album, Strip Mine, attempting a more conventional song structure in an attempt to please Sire. The album almost went unreleased, but after undergoing a slight remix to sound more radio-friendly, Sire released the album in September 1988, over a year after it had been initially completed. However, the album only reached number 90. After finding a clause for ending their contract, the band left Sire. Desperate for money, the band members were driven to the extreme of participating as human guinea pigs in medical experiments at the Manchester Royal Infirmary, earning them a place on a TV documentary about the desperation of fallen rock stars. James had by this point earned themselves a reputation as a solid live act and had built a solid fan base. Sales of James t-shirts were particularly successful in Manchester even before they reached the top 40. James financed the production of a live album with a bank loan, One Man Clapping, and the help of Rough Trade Records. The album went to number 1 in the indie charts, reinvigorating media interest in the band. Line-up changes and success, 1988 to Euro 1992. In November 1988, drummer Whelan became involved in an on-stage fight with Booth and was asked to leave the band. He was replaced by David Bainton Power a few months later. During the following year, James greatly expanded their lineup and sound palette by hiring 3 new members: Euro guitarist, violinist, percussionist Sol Davis, keyboard player Mark Hunter, and one-time Diagram Brothers Pale Fountains trumpeter percussionist Andy Diagram. This new 7-piece lineup went into the studio to record the third James album. New singles Sit Down and Come Home became strong hits in the independent charts, and the latter featured on the compilation album Happy Days. The album Gold Mother was intended to be released on Rough Trade, but the owner of the label, Jeff Travis, believed James could only reach an audience of 20,000 to 30,000. The band believed they had more potential than this and bought the rights to the album from Rough Trade. A successful winter tour in 1989 attracted a deal with Fontana Records, and the band ended a difficult decade on an optimistic note. Gold Mother was released in June 1990, just as the Manchester movement, with its wave of popular Manchester-based indie bands, focused public attention on James and won them mainstream recognition. Singles, How Was It For You, the remixed Come Home, and Lose Control all made the top 40, and the band's newfound success was reaffirmed when they played 2 sellout dates at the Manchester G-Mex at the end of the year. In March 1991, when the popularity of Sit Down led to a re-recorded version being released as a single, reaching number 2 in the UK singles chart. Gold Mother was re-released to include Sit Down, and previous single Lose Control, and the album sold 10 times more copies than Travis originally predicted. The song became one of the biggest-selling singles of the year. The band members spent the rest of the year recording their next album, 7, which was released in February 1992. It reached number 2 in the UK albums chart and earned the band some recognition in the US as they embarked on their first Stateside tour. The band's activities culminated in a sellout show to 30,000 people at the Alton Towers theme park in July, broadcast live on BBC Radio 1, following which Andy Diagram left the group. Subsequent releases, 1993 Euro 1999, in 1993 James were invited on an acoustic tour of the US supporting Neil Young at a series of natural outdoor venues in the autumn. They returned to England refreshed and ready to record their new album with Brian Eno, whom they had originally approached to produce Starter but who had been unavailable at the time. Eno set about bringing out the ambience in James' music, and took them through a recording process that the band later described as a journey of self-discovery. The process resulted in not 1 but 2 albums, the song Album, Laid, and the experimental Wah Wah, which showcased the band's improvised jams recorded on the spot, then mixed by Eno. Booth's vocals were then added to the results. Laid was released in September 1993 to positive reviews. As well as being a success in the UK, the album also broke the band in the US, shipping over 600,000 copies and charting at number 72 in the Billboard 200, propelled by the immense popularity of his Risque copyright title track on US college radio. The band spent most of 1994 touring the States. Wah Wah was eventually released in September 1994 to a lukewarm reception. The recording of the follow-up album faced difficulties from the start. 2 key members of the James Organization rescinded: a Euro guitarist and key composer Larry Gott and manager Martine McOnar. Booth announced that he also wished to take a break in order to record an album with Angelo Badalamenti. At around the same time, there was the discovery of a £250,000 tax bill owed by the band. Determined to continue despite the setbacks, the band set up studio in Bainton Powers House. Former Sharkboy guitarist Adrian Oakshall was drafted in to replace Gott on guitar, while Booth returned periodically from the States to add his vocals. 1996 saw the release of Booth's album with Badalamenti. The new James album, Whiplash, followed in February 1997. The album proved a successful comeback, reaching the UK top 10 as did the single She's a Star. The band toured to promote the album, recruiting new member Michael Cullers while in the States, on rhythm guitar. Booth suffered a neck injury while dancing on stage in the US, resulting in a series of tour dates being cancelled as he underwent emergency surgery, and the band being offered a place instead on the Lollapalooza tour. In March 1998, a greatest hits album, The Best Of, was released, compiling all the band's hits since their signing to Fontana. The album reached number 1 in the UK Albums Chart, and sellout tours throughout the year followed. The band then returned to the studio to begin work on their next album, Millionaires, which was released in October 1999. The album did not reach the phenomenal sales level predicted, but still entered the chart at number 2, and sold over 150,000 copies. New Direction and Breakup, 2000 Euro 2006. After the disappointing performance of Millionaires, the band chose to start anew in their approach to their next album, working with Eno once again. They spent most of 2000 recording the album, writing the songs, then performing them live before actually recording them. They embarked on a small-scale tour in the autumn of that year on which their setlists consisted almost entirely of new material. The album, Pleased to Meet You, was released in July 2001. The album's artwork featured a composite image of the faces of all the band members to create a new person. The album reached only number 11, the lowest position for a James studio album since their signing to Fontana. Shortly after its release, James reached the end of their contract, and Tim Booth announced he was leaving the band to concentrate on other projects of his own. He played a farewell tour of the UK at the end of the year. Their final hometown gig, at the Manchester Evening News Arena on December 7, was recorded for a live CD and DVD, Getting Away With It. Live. Past members Larry Gott and Andy Diagram rejoined them for the tour, and Brian Eno also joined them on stage at London's Wembley Arena during the tour. The album's Gold Mother, Laid, and Whiplash were re-released by Mercury Records the following year, as well as a B-sides compilation entitled B-Sides Ultra. A planned compilation of material from the band's Factory and Psy years was announced in 2001, but the album, Strange Dancing, was never released. The first two James albums, Stutter and Strip Mine, were repressed in June 2007, but without any additional rarities. Booth continued as a solo artist in 2004 with the release of his solo album Bone, co-written and produced by Lee Muddy Baker. A new compilation album, The Collection, was released in late 2004, and Savina Euro The Live concert in 2005. Reunion, 2007 Euro Present. In January 2007, music magazine Filter cited an announcement on singer Tim Booth's personal website, saying that Tim will be rejoining James in early 2007 for a series of live shows to be announced very soon. At the same time, James' old website was replaced by a new domain holder at wherejames.com. The site confirmed the lineup as that which recorded the album Laid: Booth, Gott, Glennie, Davis, Hunter and Bainton Power. Booth confirmed in interviews that he became convinced to rejoin the band after meeting up with Glennie and Gott the previous November for a jamming session, out of which new songs were born. The initial 5 dates of the tour were expanded to 7 on the day tickets went on sale due to high demand. The whole tour has sold out by close of business. The tour took place during late April 2007, and was followed later in the year by more live shows, including festival appearances at T in the Park and V Festival. The band also appeared at Summer Case, Barcelona's top music concert in Spain during July 2007. Andy Diagram also rejoined the band as trumpet player during the festival tour. April saw the release of a new compilation album, Fresh as a Die Euro The Singles, accompanied by a DVD compilation of all the band's promo videos. The new album Hey Ma was released on April 7, 2008, peaking at number 10 on the UK album charts, and a 3-week tour to promote the album commenced on April 10, 2008. An arena tour of the UK called We Are Sound followed in December, on which 2 new songs were previewed as tasters for a new studio album. A live album with a selection of songs recorded during the 2008 spring tour was exclusively sold at the merchandise stalls of the We Are Sound tour. Live in 2008 was limited to 5,000 copies. The band announced plans to release 2 mini-albums by April 2010. The Night Before was released on April 19, although its follow-up, The Morning After, was released later than expected, on August 2, 2010. Following the release of The Night Before, the band embarked on a UK tour, the Mirrorball Tour, premiering songs from the album. Another UK tour took place in December. both this tour and the US release of both mini-albums together as a 2-CD set called The Morning After the Night Before. A 19-date North American tour began in September to promote the combined album as well as showcase the songs before the UK tour. At the beginning of 2011, Tim Booth announced that he was working on some new solo material, although James remained active, participating in the Lollapalooza festival in Chile. The band appeared at Hard Rock Calling 2011 on June 24 in Hyde Park, London. They were joined by Kaiser Chiefs and headline act The Killers. The band joined again for a UK-wide tour in 2011 with the orchestra of the Swan and the Manchester Consort Choir, playing some never-heard-before live tracks including the B-side The Lake. The band appeared at the Coachella Valley Music and Arts Festival on 13th and 20th April in Indio, California. The band announced that they will appear at Kendall Calling 2012 and will headline the festival on Sunday night. Towards the end of 2011, James signaled a departure from their previous touring style, with the announcement of a series of dates in October and November of that year including an orchestra and a choir. This short, 10-day tour saw James performing their back catalogue accompanied by the orchestra of the Swan and the Manchester Consort Choir. In November 2012, the band announced a 10-date UK tour starting on April 12, 2013. In February 2014, the band announced that they are to release their 13th studio album. The album will be called La Petite Mort with a release date of June 2, 2014. The first teaser track, titled Frozen Britain, is downloadable for people who have pre-ordered the album. The first single Moving On will be released on April 28. In July 2014, the band headlined on the Castle stage for Camp Festival at Lulworth Castle in Dorset. Discography. Studio albums: Stutter, Strip Mine, Gold Mother, James, 7, Laid, Wah Wah, Whiplash, Millionaires, Pleased to Meet You, Hey Ma, The Night Before, The Morning After, La Petite Mort. References. Stuart McInerney, Folklore, Virgin Books, 2000. External links: official website,